everyone, welcome back to season 2 of our Participatory Ponderments series. So for today's episode, I have my dear friend Elaine over here. Yeah, so actually me and Elaine, we actually met through this project. So it's called Shore to Shore. So we're actually looking at the heritage of Singapore's southern islands, St. John's Island, Lazarus, Kusu and Sisters Islands. So these are the main islands that we focused, and it's part of this Temasek Foundation, NUS Libraries collaboration, the Heritage Champions program. I felt that Elaine is a really, really nice person, and she is so full of good ideas, and we always have really, really nice conversations together. So I really wanted her to be on the podcast. Do you want to share a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I always have so many ideas, maybe too many. So besides heritage, my background is in linguistics. I was in a master's program at NUS. Now I'm moving more into arts management as a career. And the whole interest of that is because I do dance as well. I have a background in Malay dance. I'm currently doing Balinese dance. So I feel very connected to Nusantara as a region. My mom's side of the family is also from Indonesia. So I'm very interested in this part of the world. I feel very connected to it.
Yeah.
And I do tarot card reading. That's the other thing that I do. I've been doing that for like 5-6 years now. I love using it as a tool to connect people together and to also help people engage with spirituality, because I feel like as a society, we're quite divorced from that. I think a lot of us shun it as well because we don't see it as something productive or rational. So a big part of like my life goal is also to connect people to spirit, like whatever that means for themselves, because I think it can be very personal. Yeah, so I guess to sum it up, like heritage, arts, spirituality, yes, like I would say those are my key focal areas.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, because we had a lot of good, conversations about spirituality. So I think you're the perfect fit for our podcast. So actually, I think the first question I ask you, right, is that to me, I feel like you're always someone who is like on top of everything. You have like so many things going on. You're managing like your studies, but you're also doing this project. And she does a lot of like ad hoc events, tarot card reading. So she's always up to something. And I just want to ask, right, like, do you ever feel tired? Juggling so many different things at the same time.
I mean, I'm only human, sadly. I mean, yes, we're all human, so I do feel tired. I do go through burnout. But I think I have gotten better at listening to my body. So I kind of know like when the warning signs are coming, and I have my coping mechanisms. But I also think maybe it's part of my own energy as well. I wouldn't call myself completely extroverted, but I do gain energy from like being around people and like connecting with people. So I think that does drive me, but I think the systems that we are involved with, they don't necessarily foster like connections. Everything is quite it's like tied to some kind of value that we're supposed to extract, right? So we have schoolmates, we have colleagues, but it's always tied to this idea of like school or work. So relationships are also centered within institutions. So I'm very interested in like breaking out those institutions and meeting people. So that is what really energizes me. But because we have all of these responsibilities that we're tied to, then it is really draining. And I have gotten burnt out to the point where I've just like crashed out, like literally crashed out. I think the last time it was really bad, minus my thesis, was during when I was first year of uni. That period was bad. It was when I broke my scholarship bond as well. I think I was like diagnosed with like depression. It was like I was not leaving my room. So I have experienced pretty bad burnout. But as I said, I think it helps if you are attuned to like listening to your body. I think it makes a difference. Yeah. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and I think it's really nice to see that you've devoted such a big part of your life to building genuine connections, relationships with people. And I think, like you said, is to promote more of like people to people, like communication, bringing people together. So that's something that I really, really respect about you in that regard. And also, you mentioned that you have some sort of like different coping mechanisms that you have.
Yeah.
Do you have any self-care routines or habits that you engage with?
I'm a big believer in not just self-care, but co-care in a way, like community care. I really like this idea of co-regulation. I think if everybody is sort of like interacting with each other already, and we can kind of like spot each other's blind spots and weaknesses, that is co-regulation in a way. Like we're matching each other's like energy levels. I don't know the specifics of the term, but you can Google it. Like, it's a psychological term, like co-regulation. And I feel like so much healing happens in communal spaces. It's not just in cocoons where we're on our own. Whenever I'm stuck in a funk, I usually just like talk to people until I gain inspiration. But that's my process. I think I'm quite external facing. Although I have tried to be more introspective. Yes, I do meditate as well. I try to kind of like just reflect, especially on stuff about like the Dharma and like human nature and the mind, mindfulness. So I try to keep a balance. And I think creativity is also a big part of the way that I try to lead life. Not say try, because I think naturally if I had like no holds barred, nothing, I would be like creative all the time. I'll be like doing things. I'll be like drawing, painting, singing, dancing, acting. Like I love all of that. But I think with everyday life, it becomes a bit harder. And another principle that I try to live by is also trying to find magic in the mundane. So that's why I got into tarot reading in the first place, because I want to help people see like even everyday events, everyday people and personalities that we come across, they're actually part of maybe like a bigger narrative, and there's like magic in that, you know, like that whole appeal of like drawing a card and drawing that to like larger connections. So does that answer the question? Sometimes I go a little bit off track.
It's okay. Really welcome any responses that you have.
Okay.
I think it's really nice that you bring out the idea of creativity, because I felt that a type of rest that a lot of people don't really think about is like creative rest.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes when being creative really puts your mind at the flow state. You really feel more well rested after engaging with creative activities. And it's also nice that now you're introducing your work doing tarot reading. Tarot reading, like of course, it's not really to kind of dictate like a specific way of how you should live your life, but it kind of offers you different insights to like learn more about yourself and how you can possibly find a way out of difficult situations you are in life. And I'm also wondering, like, how do you see your practice in tarot card reading perhaps contributes to the sort of co-regulation, co-care initiatives that you are like, campaigning for?
So I feel like tarot card reading helps people to be more reflective. I definitely don't subscribe to a prescriptive model. So everything that's laid out for you, it's just possibilities and potential. And actually, the best thing you can do with a tarot reading is to assess it for yourself, like to see what resonates and what doesn't, because that speaks volumes more than what the messages of the cards themselves actually are. How it can be co-regulation is basically it takes place within a space where you have the reader and the querent, right? The client or the querent. So in a way, you can you're already talking on a pretty intimate level, I would say. A lot of people share secrets during tarot card readings. So there's a level of trust and respect that has to happen. And how co-regulation comes into play is the sense that you are able to air out some of your frustrations, right? You trust that it's a judgment-free zone. But I also want to give a caveat that tarot is not a replacement for professional therapy or counseling. And I personally don't like seeing my clients very often, because I feel like I don't want people to use tarot, the tool of tarot card reading, as a crutch. Like, I think it can be helpful. I think it can be like extremely illuminating, but more in like small doses. And even better if it complements an existing therapy practice. So when I discovered tarot card reading, I was going through therapy. So that's the kind of foundation I have with tarot. Like, it's never meant to replace professional help, and it definitely doesn't replace like the work that you actually have to put in, both like internally and externally, to see the change that you want to achieve in your life. So I see myself as like a lighthouse in a way. I just like shine the light in like certain places. I'm like a pathfinder. I just literally I shine a light on paths, but you know, whether you walk on that path, you choose to take that path, that's completely up to you.
Yeah. And I think a question that naturally will arise from this, right, is that I think also for me is that like, for people who are not familiar with tarot card reading, could you maybe take like a minute or two to like kind of share how a typical tarot card reading session looks like? Kind of like what's the process behind it? Like, you know, how many cards do you draw? What do you... Yeah. So
people would usually come in with questions in mind already, or concerns, and I can help them to craft the questions. For the number of cards that I draw, I'm a very intuitive reader, in the sense that I don't like spreads. I rarely use spreads unless I feel like it's pertinent to what's being asked. So I just draw however many, and I shuffle until cards like fly or flip open. So it's a very intuitive process. Yeah.
How are the cards arranged? Is there like a specific like, oh, there are like 12 figures? How many figures are there in tarot cards?
Oh, there are 78 cards.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
78 cards, and they're split between major and minor. So the major cards describe themes, like bigger life lessons, bigger themes, overarching themes. Minor cards are more like everyday situations and people we come across. So combining the two, you have the micro and the macro, and they're supposed to be read in flux with each other. Yeah. So sometimes when you do a reading and you see a lot of major cards, you're like, oh my gosh, like maybe going down this path, it will be quite intense. Like it will teach me so much. But it's not to say that it's not as important if you only get minor cards. I actually think minor cards are a lot more relatable than major cards, and they really help to contextualize the details of a reading. Yeah.
Okay, that's nice. And maybe I can ask like, are there any like really memorable occasions for you doing tarot card readings? Like, 'cause I know you do readings at many different places also, right? Are there any memorable ones that you're gonna share?
I guess for context, I do readings like privately, like at my own house, but I also do readings at events, and these events can range like from like a lot of places. I do them at like markets sometimes. I've done them at museums. I've done them at like corporate sort of like gatherings and parties. So it's really all over. Memorable readings, I think each reading is quite unique to the person that's asking. I will say I can see trends. People like to ask about work and love. Like, is really, I would say like a good 90% of questions will be revolving around career or like your love life. Older people tend to ask about health, because you know, as you get older, I think your life might be more settled already, so the only questions you have are about health, but I can't really answer that fully. So I like questions that are very introspective. So sometimes people ask like, what am I missing about myself? And I'm like, wow, that's actually like quite deep. Sometimes I get very weird questions also. There was one person was asking me to read the energy of his fencing sword. Like, it's not an innuendo. Like, it's like literally he had his fencing sword. Like, it was so interesting. So sometimes I get like a bit out there questions, and those are always fun, but always in good fun and in good faith. Yeah, like I don't do like exorcisms, that sort of stuff. So I consider myself a spiritual person, but not particularly ritualistic in that sense. Yeah, so I don't have like the expertise to do spells and rituals for you, but I can direct you to people who do, and I am a big fan of just like learning and understanding everything that's out there in this universe.
That's great. Okay, I think I will also want to chat a little bit more about our involvement with the Southern Islands project that we're doing. So I think like tarot reading kind of practice, I think it's more of an individual thing, right? It's like a really sort of one-on-one personal connection.
I mean, there's one aspect of it, but I've also used tarot to talk about bigger things like the general elections.
Oh, right, you did.
So I've used tarot to talk about politics, which I think connects a lot of different disparate communities together. And I've also used tarot to talk about ideas like indigeneity and ecology. So I've done things like that before. Like it to me, it's like quite experimental. See like what sticks, what doesn't, what people are interested in. But I think the impetus behind that is because I'm so sick of academia. I'm just so sick of like writing research papers. And there are parts of academia I respect. Like I like academic integrity. I like that we have to cite, we have to know who we're referencing. So I think those ideas of mutual respect I really love. But I think the whole structure of the research paper and the whole institution of academia being very financially driven, it limits the kind of ideas that get put up, right? So we end up producing or reproducing similar kinds of ideas. So I have quite a lot of bitterness towards that. So tarot reading in a way is my own form of knowledge production, which similar to you, I think, right, with what you're doing with this podcast and with all of your side projects, we're finding alternative ways of getting people interested in all of these big ideas, but through accessible means.
Okay, yeah. I think it's also nice that you point out about the broader like landscape of the academic world, right? About how people could be financially driven and whatnot. So actually, I was also thinking, right, when we are doing research for our project on the Southern Islands, we also noticed a lot about how land reclamation, urban planning kind of shapes not just the landscape of like the country itself, but also kind of shaping the sort of mental cyclescapes of the people. When I was like kind of preparing for this podcast episode series, I was actually focusing a lot more about how like the urbanization of like city areas, how does that have an effect on the mental health of city dwellers, right? And there's a whole idea that it's like some cities can be very overcrowded. Everybody is kind of fighting for economic gain and whatnot. So I was thinking actually, what do you feel about this whole idea? Like I think earlier on you mentioned about infrastructures and whatnot, right? That kind of affects the mental health of the people. So what do you think about this sort of more macro factors affecting our well-being? Like, do you think that it's a
I
big
think
issue?
it's placemaking, right? All of this pertains to placemaking. You mentioned something about urbanizing affecting people's psychological health. Have you read Prof. Hamza's paper? Hamza and Connolly, I think. Anyway, they talk about like the urban and the peripherals and I guess the point I wanted to make, or the term I want to bring up, is like coastal urbanities. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced, but like the coastal and the urban are basically combined together. So I think even though Singapore is, and I bring it back to Singapore's context because we're in Singapore, and I think it's important to recognize like the land and the sea that we are residing in, right? So in Singapore's context, we typically see this country as very urban. We see it as a city. But at the same time, if we emphasize the coastal elements, then we actually see Singapore as part of a larger network, like Nusantara, for example, but maybe even the world as well because globalization, right? So I like this idea of different iterations of the urban, and especially like with the coastal and the urban, like these two aspects, you have nature and you have I guess like civilization, right? If you want to connect that to the urban. So I think there are ways we can create confluence and the ways that we can introduce different elements together. I think I lost the ball here. Like, what was your question?
So do you think that this sort of rapid urbanization, right, does it really have a huge effect on the mental health of the people?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like in Singapore, we can't even form connections with places because they get like destroyed, right? And every time we try to form like organic community spaces, they get replaced. And I think legitimacy is a big thing in Singapore. Like we're also paranoid that we don't have legitimacy in the sense that is what we're doing legal, illegal. So we operate along this like matrix, and what happens is that we don't spend enough time, I guess, in places because they keep changing. I kind of explored this a little bit in my thesis, like place attachment. So how people form attachment to places. One part of it is exposure. So you literally you have to spend time there and have like memorable experiences. But then the other aspect is also ideological. So you need to have some kind of like resonance with the ideas that place represents. So you need to recognize like, oh, that's home, right? I recognize that as home. Or I recognize that place as it's like where I go to for work is, or maybe like you have a third space. This is like where I gather with my friends. Maybe it's like the rooftop of a shopping mall. Maybe it's in the void deck, or like wherever like everyone gathers today. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that exposure is already compromised because places keep changing. You see, the projector is gone. Cathay is also liquidated, right? So you have these cultural spaces that people actually have like very strong memories in, just gone, like vaporized basically. And so exposure is compromised. Ideology is compromised because in Singapore we don't really have, or rather we do. I believe that Singaporeans can be like very engaged critical thinkers, but at the same time, these open discussions are not really encouraged. Like in the end, dialogues must always be facilitated by some kind of official channel or like institution, right? So anything that is organic is not necessarily like, it's not supported in the same way. And alternative thought, alternative culture, like it's still, I think it's developing, it's still very niche, and it exists within this larger framework of, as I said, like paranoia, legitimacy, fear. Like a lot of Singaporeans still live under the specter of like I think, political control. We might not recognize it as such, especially like Gen Z, right? I think we're both Gen Z, I guess. Yeah. I think because we grew up with an internet culture, everything seems so open. We think we know a lot.
Yeah.
But it could also be inherited as well, like from parents or grandparents who actually went through like Operation Spectrum, Operation Cold Star. Oh my gosh, I'm bringing up the big guns. But I think political fear and control has been a very like intrinsic part of Singapore's social national fabric, and it kind of like affects how much we dare to talk about in public spaces. Yeah. Does that make sense? So therefore it affects the ideology. Sometimes we don't even have the vocabulary to talk about ideology because we don't have those spaces in the first place to have like open critical dialogues and discussion. Yeah. And also people are just tired. The whole thing about capitalism is that you tire people out, right? You give them jobs to do, and in the end, they don't have energy to think about anything original. Yeah.
Kind of like the demise of critical thinking. You're too tired to like think of more outside of your.
It's true, but also it's just we're human beings. What that also means is that we need to have like material needs. Like we need to meet our material needs. So, I mean, the fact is, if you are struggling like to make a living, like maybe you're not like going to actively think about my identity, the ideology I have towards my nation. So we do have like very real struggles that we need to meet first. But at the same time, I think two things can happen at once. I think there is a way to address like socioeconomic inequalities and also have like critical dialogues taking place about what it means to feel attached to place and questioning like why Singaporeans don't have place attachment in the first place, ironically.
And I think also like we also mentioned I think kind of like this trajectory of how like capitalism kind of like evolved, right, especially in Singapore's context. And I was also thinking about like your own research, right, your own thesis, right, where you did research on like the kampongs or the villages.
Kampongs were one aspect, but it's not my thesis focus.
Oh, that's not your main focus?
No, I did a paper on kampong, so that was another paper that's to be published. But my thesis itself was about where people place languages around Singapore. So I wanted to see whether languages and place making have a connection, which they used to in the past. Because in the past you have Hokkien kampongs, Malay kampongs, and people would really identify you by the language that you spoke, more than race even. In the kampong system. But we don't have kampongs anymore. With urban housing, everyone's kind of mixed up as well. And there's a homogeneity to urban housing, so I think it's a bit more difficult to form distinct identities. And even if we do form attachment to places, it's on a very micro level. It's like maybe like a shopping mall or like a space within a larger building. So it's not like entire neighborhoods.
I see.
It's a bit more difficult to form that connection. But that's why I was so interested in the Southern Islands in the first place, because I was curious to see if we can form attachment to places that don't really exist anymore. I mean, they still exist, but not in the same way that they used to, but that can also tie us to a larger region. Basically combining ideas of indigeneity, but also multiculturalism. I think that kind of island framework is the way to interrogate that connection. I'm just so glad we get to work on that project together. It really made me learn so much more, right, about
these things. So, okay, I think it's a good time to transition into talking about the artworks. So, you have selected 3 artworks from the mini collection, and maybe you want to talk more about it? Like, is there any one that you can share about first? Like, which one really caught your attention when you were looking through?
Maybe the Australian one.
Australian one?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm not going to butcher the name, but this is the title, right? Stars Reflected in the River by... Okay, do you want to try? I don't think I can.
Nami Napu Mei Muru White. Could be wrong. Yeah, but I think it might be an Aboriginal artist.
I think it is, yeah.
Which part of Australia does the write-up say?
I will look up the write-up, yeah.
Yirrkala. It actually is a town. It's in Northern Territory, Australia. But basically it's in the north of Australia. And it is the name of a community, a town there. Okay. But what do you want me to share about?
So I think for me, right, the reason why I actually chose this work to be included in this collection, right, is because I felt that the whole frame of that modern fatigue, right, in today's increasingly urbanized landscape. I was also thinking how, like, building on the idea of Bill Chung Han, who I frequently reference, right, his book on the burnout society, and he's advocating for a sort of more contemplative life. as a way to go against a very active kind of life that we're living of like pursuing so many different things and overwhelming ourselves. So I felt that actually trying to think of how this idea of like Aboriginal kind of art as a gateway for us to understand what contemplation really means. Because I felt that, in this work, right, through the patterns and the swirls, it kind of really feels like a very meditative, spiritual process to come out with these works. So I think my question to you is, what drew you to this work? Is there anything about it, the context of it, the aesthetics of it, anything that really...
Yeah, I like the repetition of the patterns. And I think that is a motif that you see in a lot of, not just Aboriginal, but a lot of folk art around the world. There's a lot of repetition. And to me, I like repeated motifs because it's very communal. Like, it's not say it's easily replicated, but when you have a motif, someone else can do it, right? And I think if you think about how folk art evolved, it often happens in a communal context. Like, people would do like basket weaving, people would like make decorative pieces. There was like, it's not just meant to be hung at a museum. Like, there's beauty to it, but the beauty is determined on a communal level. So I like when I can see like repetition, and I also like that it's monochrome. I think that was what caught my eye. Yeah, I usually like colors. I'm a very colorful person, but maybe that's why when I see monochrome pieces, I'm trying to understand. Okay, like, is that an artistic choice? And like, why would it be that way? And if you think about Australian Aboriginal artwork, you also rarely see it black and white. Like, it's very, very vibrant, right? Like the dot paintings. But I think there's a mystery when you reduce it to just like a monochrome color scheme. And not just a mystery, but it forces you to focus on the form and the patterns, because now you don't have color to distract you. So maybe that's why I noticed the repeated motifs in the first place. And then I didn't know what it was describing until I saw the title, I guess, like Stars Reflected in the River. And I like nature as well. So I like when... So I don't like usually like very like hyper realistic depictions. I like when there's a bit of artistic or creative license taken. So I appreciated how I could not tell what the subject of this artwork was until I saw the title. And I think the presentation is really interesting, like different canvases laid out on the wall. So it's not just one combined canvas, but now that I know it's a river, right? So when you look at a water, it's rarely completely still. Sometimes you see a ripple, or even when things are reflected, the image gets refracted like on the surface of the water itself. So I think I feel like the canvas layout here does mirror that kind of composition. And it also reminds me of how everything is made out of pieces. Like, everything can be fragmented, but everything can be put back together again. So I like the idea of separation and wholeness and unity just kind of coming together. I like when different things come together. I like when opposites combine, or things like paradoxes. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, actually I think like in response to what you have mentioned, I think the use of like a monochrome kind of color scheme, I think it's also really very well placed, because I've seen this work presented at the Venice Biennale. There's been like thousands of artworks, like really colorful and vibrant. And I also think it kind of mirrors like our reality, where we are all like overly saturated with images, flashing advertisements trying to catch our attention. So I think seeing something that's monochrome, black and white, it really kind of slows us down a little bit, and to really focus on the movement of the piece. And also like what you mentioned about how like this kind of reminded you of like a river surface, right? How you can see ripples in the refraction of the light. And I felt that, it's really nice that this artwork brought us to think about, being more mindful about the really, really small details in life that we kind of miss out, right? I think especially part of like the sort of the modern, postmodern kind of subject, right? Is that we're always, looking for flashy things and accomplish like big things, right? But I think sometimes in this process, we kind of lost touch with nature. We lost touch of the small things in life that really makes life whole and complete. Right? Maybe the next book I'm gonna share about.
Maybe the Francis
Alice.
The Belgian artist.
This was untitled, but actually it's part of a video. I will just include it in this frame, where like it's just pair of legs kind of like swinging and dangling in midair, so it kind of loops the entire time. So what about this work that caught your attention?
I think it moves, first of all. And it's just focused on the legs, not just the feet, right?
Yeah.
Let's not be creepy. It's like the
The
leg,
legs.
the lower half of the legs.
Yeah.
And it's playful. I think you're also not sure, like, is it swinging? Are they walking? So there's a bit of uncertainty. But I like that swaying movement. I think movement is medicine. I think me included, yeah, I'm guilty. We think a lot, like we overthink, we intellectualize, we try to assign like theories and frameworks to everything.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, we still have bodies, and I think if we can think, gosh, I just really like it when things are simple and it goes back to like the relationship with the body. I feel like we're quite alienated from that. Yeah, alienation is also a capitalist concept, right? Or like Marx's alienation. Yeah, so I really like that it's so simple. It's just a simple movement, but it's at the same time contemplative, yet playful. I think it strikes that balance. Yeah. Also, I just really like the idea of walking, peripatetic movement. Whenever my brain gets stuck in a jam, I just like take a walk, and it helps so much. I either take a walk or a shower, so there's some. But the similarity I think that these motions have is that they're embodied, they're so physical. Yeah. I guess in terms of how it looks, I like that it's just line work. It reminds me of like an animator studio. So I grew up with like a lot of, I guess, like animation. I still love animation to this day. Yeah, so I would like observe how animators drew different characters and have like, they have like the different papers, like the translucent papers. So it reminds me of that, like kind of artistic process where you're like overlaying the different papers together. And maybe that's why it's so playful to me, because it reminds me of like childhood memories.
Nice.
Like it's partly, and it is animation, and it's also, when I first saw this, right, because I didn't see it as the video, I just saw it as like the screenshots. I thought it would be like ballet or dance. Yeah, because the way that it looks now is like a spotlight. So I thought it would have been like a performance. But it's actually such a simple motion, so I appreciate it all the more for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's nice that you bring out ideas of like, play, embodiment, even like your childhood kind of like memories, right? And also think of how like kind of thinking more about like our own like childhood experiences, when times were more carefree and whatnot. Because I think when Francis Alice made this work, he also mentioned something about the bipedalism of like adulthood, where then as adults we're always like walking on two legs, like
Even though I walk on four. Like
I mean, as in like when was the last time we let our legs like swing freely, being so carefree, right?
we shake our legs at our desk table, right?
Yeah, but
in impatience.
We are always like so like in a sense like grounded, not in that mental sense, but like both feet on the ground, like rooted firmly on the ground. So I think it's also nice that you mentioned the idea of like playfulness as a way to kind of combat this whole like very seriousness of life and over intellectualizing frameworks that people impose onto each other. So I think this is kind of like in itself like an act of resistance to me also, right? Resisting against any sort of defining traits of how we should live our lives. Yeah, I didn't know that you thought that this would be like a ballet dance piece.
It looks like a spotlight. I thought it was a stage.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
It could be.
It could be.
I mean, dance is movement, right? Sometimes dancers don't even call themselves dancers anymore. They're just like movement artists.
Oh yeah.
So we can totally deconstruct that.
Yeah. Okay, so it's, thanks for sharing about this work. So the final work that you want to talk about is Autoretrato by Raquel Forner.
Argentinian artist.
Yeah. So what do you think about this work?
I like that it's a self-portrait. I'm very biased towards artist self-portraits because I'm very interested in self-perception, like how people perceive themselves. So I think that was what struck me. Also, there's so much going on, right? Yeah, so I think I was curious about the details and the globe, like the bloody globe, the map, like a lot of maps happening actually.
Right,
yeah, so I think the artist was consciously trying to position herself geographically, but also like geopolitically. So I think this is a very literal representation. Yeah, it's quite different, I think, from the artworks that I'm usually I gravitate towards. But I think what really struck me about this is like it feels like a professor's office or like a classroom. So maybe it had that familiarity, but like it's all bloodied up, it's all messy because this was also painted during 1941, right? So like the World War, the Second World War. So I like that it has this sense of chaos in a familiar space. At least familiar to me. Yeah, sorry, I was a prison of the university for a long time. So and I just like maps. Yeah, I just think maps are so cool. And I when I look at all these like different artworks, in my mind I'm already doing like a mental map of everything. So that's cool.
Yeah.
And I like her body language. There's something confronting about it, but also defensive. Like one of her hands is like laid up in front of her torso.
Yeah.
And is it because she's wounded? And I'm only thinking of the wound because there's blood on the globe, right? But I feel like there's a sense of awkwardness to that pose. And this whole painting makes me feel very awkward. And I like when I feel like destabilized through an artwork. Like it's not just a pretty piece, right? Like there's something interesting going on here. Yeah, and I feel like it's one of those paintings where you can zoom into like every corner and you would find a detail that you hadn't noticed before. Like I'm now only noticing the hand, like the severed hand here, and the bird, like the dead bird. And I don't know, like the hand is fascinating to me. There's a lot of hands in this painting, and we know it's about, I guess, like responsibility. Like the artist is wondering like about social responsibility in a way, right? Like political responsibility, and like who has blood on their hands. It reminds me of that phrase. And also like lending a helping hand. So there's a lot of metaphors that we human beings attach to hands. So I quite like that repeated imagery, that motif.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also think that this piece that you've chosen, they really contrast quite starkly with the other two works, because I think this is really like a lot of colors, a lot of different visual motifs overlaid on top of each other. And I also think that what you mentioned about maps, right, it's also interesting because like we see like this like globe that's covered in blood, right? I think responding to the World War, responding to also the colonial period of time where we see a lot of bloodshed and damage, destruction to human lives, to the environment. And also think that how like the idea of mapping is also interesting, because I think the very act of mapping is also kind of like trying to form up like, you know, territories, trying to like come up with like boundaries between like landscapes and places, right? So I also think that responding to kind of like how our modern life is like, it's kind of like how like we are always being compartmentalized into your own roles and responsibilities, like the kind of to you only belong in this boundary or this territory that is drawn for you, kind of things. Yeah,
there is a term called deterritorialization, which I also explored in my thesis. Oh gosh. Basically it's saying that because of the way the world works now, like we have a lot of migration, right? Globalization. So even though there are these nation-imposed territories, they're also being deterritorialized. And the other process that accompanies deterritorialization is re-territorialization. So we form new boundaries, but they might not adhere to like the nation state. That's where agency comes in. And I think when we talk about responsibility, we should also talk about agency. I think they come like hand in hand together. So maybe that's what the artist was also exploring, like her own agency in the way that she depicts herself, but also agency in a broader sense of like what is her position, like in the context of all of these global events. Also, my favorite, like for a little tangent, my favorite portraits are done by like Frida Kahlo, which is very, very different vibe, right? And the interesting thing about Frida Kahlo is she was very politically active. She really was, especially with like the Communist Party. Like she had a whole thing with Trotsky. Super interesting side story. But you might not be able to tell from her artworks because they're extremely like dreamlike. They're focused on that like the fantastical interior. There's a lot of nature imagery. So I think I also like it when it's like this. Like what's the artist's name? Raquel Fournier. So I also like it when it's more like realistic and straightforward. I think it shows that there are so many ways that we are political. Like the personal is political, right?
And it's so nice that you're fascinated by like artists like self-portraits, because it's also
and
in
also
itself.
Frida would have been around the same time, 1940s. I think she was definitely also painting around that time. Yeah, so in the 1940s, she was actively participating in exhibitions in Mexico and the US. So she was definitely active during that period. So maybe it just reminded me because they were like contemporaries of each other, if you put it that way.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, so I feel like you have a really, really like keen eye for like details, like picking up the hands and whatnot. And so maybe start to think a little bit more about, what these hands could mean in the context of this painting as well. Like, you see, like even this one, like this date, like it may be a dove actually, the idea of like peace
Yeah.
being, shot down in times of war and crisis.
And then the hands here also.
Yeah, it's something to think about. I have no like immediate answers or whatnot. Just thinking about it. Yeah. So, yeah. Thanks for choosing these artworks and talking more about it. So I think I'm reaching the nearing the end of our podcast. So just want to ask, like, how do you find this whole exercise of like talking about art and using art as a way to understand the human condition? How do you find this experience so far?
I think it's a two-way process. I think we can use art to understand the human condition, but the human condition also shapes art.
Of course.
So-
Do you think this is a process that makes you feel like, oh, it's nice that some of the artworks resonated with you? Did it make you realize anything new about yourself?
I think it made me realize that my sense of aesthetics maybe is not as fixed as I thought it was. Yeah, and I think it's a nice exercise in exploration and just seeing what resonates with you. I'm not like a complete stranger to art. Like I've done art history modules before, but this is a different way of approaching
Yeah.
art. So I do like that it's also very interactive. I love dialogues. I love like talking.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's cool, the interactive component. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any final words to the audiences, about our conversation today?
I think art is all around you, low key. So if you can even just think about something that struck you, doesn't even have to be visual. It can be orally, it can be movement based as well. Just something that struck you. I think that saying how like the personal is political, but I think like personal is political is spiritual. I think all of these different dimensions come together. So just reflect on something that resonated with you, and you don't have to have a conclusion, but I think in and of itself the act of reflection is art because you're meaning making from it, like you are making meaning. So I think that is the beauty of any kind of medium, is that you derive your own meaning from that process, and I felt like we kind of did an experiment in that today. So that's what I encourage you to try as well.
Alright, so thank you so much once again for coming on to this
Thank you.
podcast, and thank you everyone for listening. See ya. Bye.
See you.